Jason, I don't know if we have any information coming in on how any of the true freshmen are performing, but on the surface, David Stone and Taylor Tatum were the headliners in a class where there were 16 blue chippers. Is there anybody else there, or would those be the two guys that would have the best chance of making an impact, seeing the field on a regular basis out of the 2024 class?
Yeah, I think interestingly enough, there's a couple of surprises on the defensive side that I don't think a lot of people thought that might be able to make an instant impact that are really, I think, running at the very least with the twos right now. And interestingly enough, it's Dave. One of those is David Stone's teammates at IMG last year, Jaden Jackson. He's a guy that's running right now, probably running with the twos. I think Oklahoma is pretty solidified on the interior side of things, specifically with when you look at Dominique Williams coming over from TCU, and then gosh, the transfer from Tennessee, last year, Dejounte Terry. So I think those are the two guys that you look at up front. But Jaden Jackson's right there at the two, and I think you know what I've heard a little bit about David Stone, really not a ton. I think he's a guy that I think is probably if Oklahoma's looking at him to be an instant impact guy, um, I think there's probably some issues, whether that be injuries or just performance up front. Not that he's not ready. I think he's a guy that will play some, but I don't know that he's necessarily right now up in those ones and twos, but could certainly get there as well. Now I think the other guy that um, really is a bit of surprise is Eli Bowen, Peyton Bowen's brother, who's a true freshman in this year. He's right there. He's the backup to Kendall Dolby and the Cheetah. So not anywhere near as I wouldn't say anywhere near as ballyhooed in terms of a recruit like his brother Peyton was, but he like I said, he's playing right now kind of on the twos with the Cheetah, and so I think so. He's another. So those are the two that I've kind of heard some noise about that are making some noise on the defensive side of the ball. And like I said, it's not anything specific to nobody else on the defense that's standing out. It's the guys that you would expect, that you have expected over the last few years. Danny Stutzman on the linebacker core, Woody Washington, Gentry Williams, um, from the defense. I mean, from the secondary perspective, and then safeties. You've got Peyton Bowen, which was kind of a little bit of a funny clip last week. There was a question that was asked to um, that was asked to Brent Venables about Peyton Bowen if you expect to see him on the field, and he said, "Well, if him, not who. Yeah, if not him, who? Just in terms of yeah, there's no question about that. And to be fair, they're a little bit they've got a lot of young kids in there from a depth perspective at the safety position. So I think you can pretty much your top three safeties are going to be Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, and then Robert Spears Jennings Jr. when they go to a three safety look. But yeah, like and so those are some of the guys that look like that they're making some plays early on, and I think you've week one. I think a lot of it's not in pads, and then they went to shells a little bit last week, so I don't know that they're in full pads just yet, and so things like that will change a little bit. And I think one of the big I think hopes from a contribution perspective was Kip Lewis alongside Danny Sussman in the linebacker at the linebacker core, and he seems to. I think he had really good instincts. I think he was a little bit light last year. He's done a really good job at kind of gaining that weight and getting to a more physical presence, and so that instinctual play has continued to be there. And then when you add the body type in there, I think that's going to be a big help. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the consensus has been that the defense isn't really making a whole lot of mistakes early on. They're playing solid where you would expect them to be. Um, I think I mean, commentary related to new defensive coordinator Zach Alley is that I think it's a new voice, versus what they heard in the past, and he's a little bit more, he's younger, relates to the kids a little bit better, and so I think it's been a little bit of a refreshing look for Oklahoma from a defensive perspective.
And I know I offered that up on David Stone with 9 out of the top 10 tacklers back on defense, and knowing that they brought in so much on the transfer portal along the defensive front, because anytime a true freshman plays, the good reason is because you just can't keep him off the field. He's that good. The negative situations in which that occurs is obviously we've got nobody else, and these are the best true freshmen we have, and they've got to play. And Oklahoma's not in that situation. I was just a bit curious about whether David Stone was in that position, but it seems to be no hurry, no rush for him to move along. But of course, he's got the talent. Like you say, things change throughout the course of the season based on injuries, and also just guys stepping up in practice and getting comfortable and showing at some point that they are ready to go. Well, the opener's on a Friday night against Temple. The next Saturday, one-time conference foe for all of 1 year, Houston comes to town. And that's on September 7th. And they're going to have some throwback jerseys. I don't know where you stand, Jason, on the fashion portion of football in terms of your care for what they wear and what it looks like, and whether you're more a traditionalist or you kind of like the throwbacks. But we'll put the throwbacks on display here, and you can let us know what you think.
Yeah, Mark, I'm probably somewhere in between the two, right? I mean, I'm from a traditionalist perspective. I'm trying to remember the year. So Oklahoma actually wore these uniforms. It's been quite some time, but yeah, they wore these at one point. But yeah, I don't know, Mark. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle. I mean, it doesn't really, as a fan or just someone that's watching, doesn't really impact me one way or the other. I mean, some of the things that I don't like, and it's not really specific to Oklahoma, but the one things that I struggle with is when the uniforms don't even remotely resemble what they look like today, right?
Yeah.
But these are obviously ones that Oklahoma has worn before. And yeah, I mean, kids like it, right? I mean, it's a recruiting tool. At the end of the day, this is something that kids like. It brings kids into the program. I would hate to think that a kid chooses to go to a school simply based on the uniform, right? But at the end of the day, it is something that, I mean, I think kids are just asking for these days, the ability that newness and freshness of uniforms that you don't see a whole lot. So yeah, it looked like there was I watched a little bit of the clip and saw the article, and it looks like it was one of those things where they have there was some genuine excitement for that. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see when Houston comes to town.
And yes, you basically have two versions of the alternate uniforms. Either some designer has come up with something that's completely out of left field that only somewhat represents what that school looks like, or in this case, this is a throwback. This is a Bud Wilkinson era throwback, and you saw the photos there. It very much looks like something that you would see from the 1950s or 60s. And
Hmm.
so that's a throwback to the Wilkinson era. And again, that's going to be on the 7th of September against Houston, game number 2.